Welcome to Conversations, Lehman College's series of discussions with major theater artists of our time. For the second of a two-part chat, our guest today is the celebrated theater director, artistic director of Washington's Shakespeare Theater Company, and Richard Rogers, director of the drama division of the Juilliard School, Michael Kahn. Welcome to Conversations again, Michael.
It's nice to be here.
When I think of your enormous career, one part of it really stands out and fascinates me, is your relationship to the work of Tennessee Williams. Just about one of my favorite playwrights, and
mine too.
And your production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was very important with Miss Ashley. How did that come about, and tell us about it?
Well, I was the artistic director of the American Shakespeare Theater up in Stratford, Connecticut, and I thought we should be doing what I consider also modern classics. And so I wanted to do a play of Tennessee's, and I thought maybe Cat on a Hot Tin Roof would be a wonderful play to do, because it's written with characters that are much larger than life. I mean, somebody called Big Daddy or Maggie the Cat has a kind of idea of hugeness and largeness that seemed to belong to a theater that was doing Shakespeare. But I found out that I had to meet Tennessee Williams in order to get the rights to do the play. So they made an appointment for me to see him at his hotel. And I was very, very nervous. I mean, Tennessee Williams was a great idol of mine, and the idea that I had to meet him and sort of sell myself on doing this play was really quite scary for me. And I got up to the hotel, I rang the bell, and a young man brought me in, ushered me in, and said that Tennessee would be coming out shortly. And I was very, very nervous. And then Tennessee came out, and he was quite nervous and shy. I mean, awkward and ill at ease. And we kind of sort of had some sort of conversation that I remember, but I didn't think I was selling myself very well, and I don't think he particularly was trying to interview me. And then the doorbell rang again, and Robert, this young man, opened it again, and this little old lady, wizened old lady, walked in, and Tennessee went over and hugged her, and it was his sister Rose, who was taking the day, I guess, had the day off from the sanatorium. And I thought, oh my God.
Rose of Glass Menagerie.
I'm with the original Tom and Laura of Glass Menagerie. Oh. You know, the sister had the lobotomy. And he was so solicitous of her. And she kept wanting menthol cigarettes. That's all she wanted. And watching him take care of her so relaxed me that eventually we all sort of relaxed, and I got the rights to the play. And then Tennessee came up and spent the whole rehearsal period with us. And it was just an extraordinary period. As a matter of fact, he actually rewrote the third act for that production. If you remember, he had written one act, and then when it was done on Broadway with Elia Kazan said he didn't like Tennessee's last act. He wanted something else, and so there was a Broadway last act, and Tennessee was never happy with it. So he got a chance to do what he wanted in Stratford, and then it came to Broadway, and then he published his version, and I, you know, it was quite extraordinary for me to have any kind of collaboration with Tennessee. And then I worked on Streetcar, which he came to see, and then I was in Venice, and I went to Venice the summer after Cat on a Hot Tin Roof opened on Broadway, and so I was very proud of the fact that I had this successful Broadway show, you know, of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof of Tennessee Williams, and I was pretty cocky about the whole thing, and all of a sudden Tennessee showed up in Venice, and we were at the swimming pool of this hotel, and he loved to swim, and he'd come out and he'd always say, "Hello, Milton," to me. And finally I could see everybody thinking Michael Kahn's never met Tennessee Williams, he doesn't even know who he is. So anyway, he realized who I was, but he just got my name wrong. But it was pretty wonderful, except Tennessee would laugh at the oddest places of his own script. He had little funny code things in his plays that struck him as hilarious. And he had a laugh like a hyena. I don't know if you remember. It was a hysterically high-pitched, hugely loud laugh. And he would sit in the theater and laugh in the middle of a scene that didn't seem funny to anyone else.
Ruined the
So
performance.
on opening night, I didn't watch my opening night. I just took him to 4 bars and got him during the entire run of the opening night, so he wouldn't spoil it. Once, when he was at the opening of a play called "The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore," or he was at a preview, he was screeching and screeching and screeching. So a woman turned around and said to him, "Don't you know better? Would you be quiet? Don't you know any better?" Oh, I've just ruined this story. I'm sorry. She said, "Would you be quiet?" He said, "I'm the author, ma'am." Then she said, "Well, then you should know better." But it was funny the first time. But anyway, but he was such a, and still is for me, he and Eugene O'Neill for me are the extraordinary American playwrights who I know will stay as great classics in the American theater. There are others, but for me, their ambitions and their way of getting to this extraordinary sense of what theater can do. And they both were, in their own way, sloppy writers.
Right.
Both. I mean, I've done Camino Real a couple of times. I've done Glass Menagerie. I've done a bunch of, suddenly last summer, I've done a lot of Tennessee's plays. And in going back and looking at the first drafts and the second drafts, you can see that he just wrote and had not a really strong idea of construction. And that is actually, I think, Kazan, who helped him hugely in the construction of those early plays. And one of the things that happened is when he and Kazan parted company as director and author, that his plays were less completed when he had other directors. But
do you think we're going to be discovering any more undiscovered plays of
Tennessee's?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was sent 15 of them about 3 years ago.
Right.
15 plays that were discovered in a shoebox in the University of Texas in Austin. And I did 5 of them in Washington, and I did 5 of them here in New York. And they were clearly journeyman work, but I thought they had wonderful things in them. And certainly Until Sad Tales of the Death of Queens, his first really overtly gay character. You know, people always accused him of writing women what were really gay men. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. But so here he wrote an actual gay man, and he wrote it beautifully, way ahead of the time that anybody would allow that kind of thing in the theater. And he wrote it with honesty and sensitivity. And it had never gotten done in his lifetime. I wish he'd seen it.
Well, I always felt that Cat on the Hot Tin Roof was way ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its time.
And beautiful play, and must have frightened some people half to death.
Well, Camino Real, which was, we talk about Adrian Kennedy's poetry and metaphor. Camino Real, which is a completely poetic, metaphoric play, was a disaster. It came right after Streetcar, or came right after Glass Menagerie, no, right after Streetcar. And he had written it before. He'd written it as a one-act play, worked on it. And his agent said, don't do it, you mustn't do it. And he did it, and it came out. And no one understood it, and it was a terrible flop. I saw it when I was in high school. I didn't understand it at all. I thought it was the most magical thing I'd ever seen. I went back and saw it that night. I thought it was so unlike anything I'd ever seen. And the disaster that play was for Tennessee, I think, was a turning point for him. And I think he always would have liked to have written plays that were less linear, more metaphoric. And it was interesting, after he was no longer a hot playwright anymore, that his last plays are more like that. But by that time, I don't think his powers were as strong for a variety of reasons. I have a lot of plays of his that he wrote at the end of his life that have never been done, that are crazy. I'd love to do them at midnight someplace.
I would love to see them. You know, I would come at midnight.
You know.
I would come at noon.
Yeah, it'd be better at midnight. I think it'd be sort of the Rocky Horror Show time. I think these would be better for.
I I wanted to talk a little bit about Lysistrata. What Lysistrata? I can't.
Or however.
However,
I think in
the
the opera
nude
we
goddess.
probably say Lysistrata somewhere.
The new opera by Mark Adamo. That's happening on March 30th, 31st.
I don't like to know the opening nights of my opening nights because it scares me. So you know better than I. It's somewhere at the end of March. I'll be there.
At the New York City Opera. That you premiered the work in Houston, the Houston Grand Opera. Will the New York version be substantially different, or is it going to be the same one?
I don't think it'll be substantially different. I know that Mark has made some revisions for some suggestions that he felt out of the Houston production. It'll be substantially the same, though. It was pretty good down in Houston, actually. Mark's an extraordinarily talented guy.
Mark is a wonderful composer. New York saw Little Women, which I consider a masterpiece, a modern masterpiece. How did the opera come to your attention?
Well, I think Mark, although I didn't know Mark, I think Mark had seen a production of Vanessa that I had done in Washington, the Samuel Barber Menotti opera. And then we saw each other, we were reading names at the quilt.
At the AIDS quilt.
At the AIDS quilt, when we were reading names of people who had died as part of a 2-day thing. And that might have put me and opera together for him. And so he called me up. I had stopped doing opera for a lot of reasons. And he called me up and said, "I'm Mark Adamo, you don't know me." I said, "Well, I know who you are, of course." And we also met that day. And he said, "Well, I've written a new opera. Would you be interested in thinking about it?" I was incredibly flattered. And he sent me the libretto, because the score hadn't yet been finished. And the libretto made me laugh. Now, I actually don't like the play of Lysistrata. I've never thought it was funny. I've never enjoyed it. I saw it on Broadway with Melina McCory. I
It's a one-joke
funny
play.
for a minute.
One joke.
Our husbands go to war. In order to stop the war, we won't have sex with them.
That's it.
That's it. And this libretto made me laugh. So I called up Mark. I said, "Well, I would do this as a play. So I really am interested." I didn't get the music for a very long time. I agreed to do it without hearing the music, which is really odd with the composer. But he wrote the book, as he calls it, and it was wonderful. So, and it was one of the nicest experiences I've had working with someone. I mean, he was a delight to work with. He's very smart and very articulate and very talented. And
well, we're going to see some clips from it, from the Houston production.
Oh, good.
We will see in quick succession Myrine, played by Lakita Michel, seducing her blindfolded husband, Kinesias. Lysistrata, played by Emily Pulley, revealing her no-sex plan to the other women. And at the end of Act 1, we'll see the Athenian and Spartan soldiers joining forces to defeat their wives' pleas for peace. And so, can we roll it?
I remember
did show the women's reaction to when she said no sex. It's very funny what they do then, too. They're not happy either.
I can't wait to see what you've done with it physically. Are there any particular moments that you want me to notice especially?
I know it's Mark's piece.
Okay.
It really belongs to Mark. We had a really good time. But again, it's my job to try to help Mark's piece come alive. So.
Now that is, as a playwright and a librettist, a wonderful thing to hear from a director. That it, because many directors, I think, don't feel that way. They wouldn't talk that way, but their job is to have their work seen rather than to have the work itself be seen.
Well, maybe it comes with age. You know, when my first big Shakespeare was Henry V, and I did it on a jungle gym, and people were on stilts and were birds, and you know, everybody saw me.
Right.
And it helped, got me out of the pack, and I think, you know, over the years, I mean, my work is my work, and I believe in my work, but I think it's my job, really, to try to find the most interesting, most alive way to bring out what the piece is about. But certainly with a new piece, I mean, if I was doing Tosca again, maybe I'd want to see what Michael Kahn's Tosca is like, but nobody knows what Mark Adamo's Lysistrata is, and so I think that's the first thing they have to see. You know, Mark will direct it someday, and maybe he'll direct it differently than me, but I was very happy with Mark, and I think Mark was reasonably happy with me.
As you know, we're going to be having a conversation with Mark next week on this show.
So well, he's about the smartest, most articulate person I've ever met in my life, so you're going to have a good time.
We talked the last segment about educating young actors. Do you educate young directors? Is that possible?
We had a program. Yeah, we had a program at Juilliard, and I just felt that finally we didn't give them enough opportunity to direct. We gave them a lot of opportunity to talk about theory. We gave them a lot of opportunity to participate, seeing actors, take classes in other things. So I think directors, one of the things directors more and more do not know anything about is actors. And it's, you know, the actor is their biggest tool, and they tend not to know what to do with an actor more and more. They're great visual people, they're great philosophical people, they're great text people, but the actual engine that they have, an actor, they don't know what makes it work, and they don't know how they can shut it down. You know, you can say something to an actor like, "Jeff, that's terrible," and you don't mean that so much, but the actor goes home thinking, "I can't act," and you don't get anything from them for a while. So I was hoping that what we could do, in addition to encouraging each director to have their own voice, and I think that's very important, that any art school should encourage an individual voice in the person, is to get them to understand what makes an actor tick and how you can make that work at its fullest. But I didn't think that we had enough space at Juilliard to do enough productions for the directors, so I've suspended that program. I think you can teach directors a lot of things, but the truth of the matter is that directors learn by doing, and then having maybe a mentor.
So it's not so much directing classes as at a certain level, more doing a production and mentoring.
Yeah, but I mean, there are classes you can tell them, you can introduce them to text, you can introduce them to theories, you can introduce different styles of theater that perhaps they don't know about, but eventually a director really learns by doing.
As an actor learns by doing. Now at Juilliard, you have a writing component to it.
Playwriting.
A playwriting component. Do you think writers can be taught?
Well, I think they can be. Again, you can encourage them to find their own voice. You can encourage them to develop a structure that makes sense. It may not be your structure, but it may, within the context of how they're writing, you can help them with structure. You can perhaps help them with tempo and things like that. I think it's wonderful for Juilliard to have a playwriting program because our young actors and the playwrights work together a lot. And so they influence each other. And I'm so pleased now when I see all the, a lot of our writers are doing very well, and they often use actors that they've met when they were at Juilliard. And that's what I was hoping, even with the directing program, that new forms would come out, new theaters would come out, and I still hope that. I still hope that. And I hope that we don't lose everybody all the time to film and television. I think it's very important to do film and television, but I also believe in the particularness of theater, and I hope that the writers and the directors and the actors will always have one foot in the theater as part of their art.
Why?
I think you get to do more complicated things. I think you get to say more difficult things. You get to make more personal statements. And you're in control, finally, in the theater. As a director, even, you're not, as an actor, you're definitely not in control in film. You're the editor and the director. As a writer, you're probably rewritten by 15 different people in a movie. Or you're the rewrite person, or as they're doing now even. All right, I do a screenplay for a movie, but somebody, and Tom Hanks is in it, somebody comes in and fixes Tom Hanks's dialogue to be better for Tom Hanks. And they'll hire Carrie Fisher, they'll hire somebody else, even uncredited, to do that person's material. In the theater, the playwright writes, the director directs, and the actor, when they're all gone, acts. And they're in control of what happens in the present all the time, and that's a very special thing. And you're doing it with other people who are reacting to you in the present differently every night. It's the most fun.
While you're mainly doing classics, but you're doing some new work, what would appeal to you in a new play?
Well, I hope that we're building a second theater in Washington, and so when we have these two theaters, I hope that we'll first of all be doing a lot of different kinds of classics, plays that people don't know. But I'm also hoping, since we're a large company and we can do plays with 15 and 20 people that people don't do on Broadway or very many other places, that we might be able to encourage playwrights, might commission perhaps playwright to do a larger piece, and plays that language is actually the vehicle for the playwright's way of communicating. That's what I'm hoping.
That's very exciting. Now, this is your last semester at Juilliard.
As the director.
You're going to be teaching at Juilliard.
I'm going to continue teaching my third-year class. Because we're opening a new theater in Washington and we're building a brand new space, and I will be running 2 theaters and 8 productions a year, and also turning it into an art center too, so there'll be music and dance and everything else there. I'm going to have a lot to do. And so I thought I should not also be trying to do these 2 full-time jobs I've been doing for so many years. But I promised all the actors who are there now, who came in when I was the director of the school, that I would teach them when they get to their 3rd year. So that's at least 2 more years of first and second year students that are there now, that I promised that I would work with them in their 3rd year.
Do you have...
And I love teaching. I use a lot of my students in plays. So, I mean, Kelly McGillis was my student, Kevin Klein was my student, and right now, this year, I would say in every play that we've done there, whether I've directed or not, there have been 1 or 2 people who I've had the fortune, good fortune to train.
I feel the same way. It's exciting to hear that.
Right.
Do you have any advice for young actors, for our young actors here at Lehman?
Well, I think I said it, perhaps in the other conversation, that if you don't love the exploration of it, and the rehearsal part and the investigation and the doing of it, then this is not a good thing to do. Because if you're counting on the success of it, you're going to be disappointed. If you're fed spiritually and intellectually and creatively by the act of doing it, of finding it, then even if you're in a success or you're not a success, you'll be rewarded on some way in a deep level. I also think that it's, if there's anything else you could do, then you should do it. But if there's nothing else you want to do, then you don't have a choice. And then you should do it. You should get all the tools you need to do it better than anybody else. And you should have a lot of courage and a lot of drive and a lot of energy, and you should take care of yourself, and you should have good health. You should eat right, sleep right. You're going to need everything to make it, to get by in this profession. I think I've had one of the most wonderful lives in the world by having been in the theater since I was a kid. And if I was hit by a truck leaving your studio, I would say, as I'm taken in the ambulance, I've been very lucky. I had a life in the theater, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Michael, I think that's a terrific note to go out on. It's been such a great pleasure to reconnect with you for a long overdue chat. Thank you, Michael Kahn, and our studio and home audiences for joining us today. And we hope to see you again soon for further conversations.